Clips v flats. It's one of the oldest arguments in mountain biking, but which is right for you? In this video, I'm going to talk about the pros and cons. You know what, Ed, give me the script. Sorry, that's going in the bin because there are dozens of clips versus flats videos out there. I've watched a load of them, you've probably watched a load of them too, and they all start off like that and they all cover the same points. So what I want to do is talk about some of the aspects of riding clips and flats that aren't covered by those other videos. Because I think there are a few lazy generalizations repeated over and over again when discussing this topic, when the truth is actually a bit more nuanced. So stick around to find out what they are, but before we go any further, let's clear up one of the most confusing aspects of shoes and pedals. Pretty obvious what a flat pedal and shoe is, right? There's a broad flat platform to each side of the pedal on which the sticky rubber sole of the shoe sits. In this case, that's 510 Stealth Phantom rubber, and this brings grip and stability to the foot. But clipless pedals don't make any sense at all. The shoe clips into the pedal, so how can it be clipless? The answer can be found in the annals of cycling history, when riders used metal cages and leather straps to hold their feet stable on the pedals. These were called clips and straps, so when an enterprising ski brand decided to miniaturize a ski binding and adapt it for cycling, those clips suddenly went in the bin. Hence, clipless pedals, and the name has stuck, even if a better description would be clip-in pedals. In mountain biking, the early pioneers ran vicious-looking bear trap pedals and work boots to ride in. Then racers popularised the clipless pedal to the point that flat pedals almost died out. But in 2002, 510 revolutionised mountain bike footwear with the help of legendary Aussie downhillers Chris Kovarik, Nathan Rennie and a young Sam Hill. The shoes were worn to victory in some pretty significant downhill races, and the mountain bike world sat up and started to take notice. Finally, in 2004, the first 510 Impact shoes went on sale, and they were an instant hit with downhillers, free riders and trail riders. At last, you could have the fun and freedom of flat pedals without your feet flying off at the first bump. Fast forward 20 years and 510 has developed its footwear lineup to include a plethora of flat and clip-in shoes. There are shoes designed for dirt jumping, downhill racing, backcountry adventures, and of course, trail and enduro riding. With two of the most popular models being the Freerider Pro flat shoe and the Hellcat Pro clip-in shoe. The Freerider Pro won our Editor's Choice Award back in 2019 and continues to be the benchmark flat pedal shoe against which all others are judged. It comes with 510's Stealth S1 Dotty rubber outsole, which, as you'd expect, is super grippy when combined with a good set of flat pedals. The toe box is reinforced, which should help with rock strikes or any trail nasties you might encounter, and it has a quick drying upper. But the key feature for me has to be the moulded EVA midsole, which adds an extra layer of protection and a whole load of comfort and control to the ride. At the other end of the spectrum, if you're a rider more focused on downhill and enduro and like the idea of clips, I'd suggest something like the Hellcat Pro shoe. It has their Stealth Marathon rubber outsole, so you can be sure you'll have plenty of grip, even if you accidentally become unclipped. There's also a stiffer midsole, which will come in handy when you're mashing on the pedals during an enduro stage or downhill run. To add some extra support, 510 has included a hook and loop strap, which will keep your feet feeling locked into the bike when pushing hard on descents, pulling for gaps or pedaling between stages. As you'd expect, downhill and enduro can be pretty tough on shoes, so the Hellcat Pro also features a synthetic upper with abrasion-resistant weldings to help with durability. So when people talk about the pros and cons of clips versus flats, some of the most common things we hear are that flats are better for your technique, clipless pedals are more efficient, and flats are easier to ride more loosely. But while those stereotypes do have some truth to them, I also think there's a lot more to them than meets the eye. So let's go through them one by one, starting with the assertion that flat pedals make you a better rider. While I'm definitely of the opinion that learning how to ride flat pedals is a must and teaches you the fundamentals of weighting the bike, pushing for pop and lift, and means you can't cheat at basic moves like bunny hops, I also think that once you have the correct foundation to your technique, making the move to clipless pedals lets you take your skills to the next level. Because when you're riding clipped in on technical descents and loose enduro tracks, it really encourages you to keep your feet planted on the pedals. And to do that, you need to build up the confidence in your assessment of the grip levels. In short, you have to be really in tune with your bike and the trail in a way that you might not when you have the luxury of being able to throw a foot out quickly if the bike starts to slide. Flat pedals are synonymous with sticking a foot out, and sometimes it's irresistible, but doing so can also upset your flow. When it's a series of alternate corners or switchbacks, if you take your inside foot out, your outside foot will naturally drop. And if you're on the brakes between the two corners and there's nowhere to reset your riding position, you can end up going into the next corner with your outside foot up and locked because you can't backpedal and the rear wheel isn't turning. It's much better if you can keep your feet up and backpedal between turns. The next generalisation I have issue with is that clipless pedals are more efficient than flat pedals. Search online and you'll find studies that prove that is not necessarily the case. The truth is, clipless pedals do make it easier to be more efficient, but you can still transfer loads of power through a set of flat pedals if you have good technique. And I've got a little anecdote to go with this point. When Sam Hill, arguably the most celebrated flat pedal racer on the planet, signed for Specialized, he spent every day of his off-season riding a fixed wheel track bike to improve his pedaling technique. Now, Hill dominated downhill for many years on tracks that involved more pedaling than most modern courses. And one of the reasons why he did that is because he worked on his weaknesses so that flat pedals were no longer a disadvantage to him when he needed to get on the gas. The flip side of that argument is that you can't ride loose on clipless pedals. Again, I think that is total nonsense. Just look at Ronan Dunn or Phil Atwell. In fact, pretty much any of the top World Cup racers. They're loose as the proverbial goose, and it has nothing to do with the pedals that they ride. It's all down to skill and confidence. So what about me? What pedals do I use? Well, I started out on toe clips and straps. Then I moved to clipless pedals when they came out in 1990. When I stopped racing XC, I learned how to ride flat pedals, and I was one of the riders who had their minds blown by the extra grip of 510s when they hit the market. And then as more and more e-bikes started coming through the door here at MBR, I started to ride clipped in again. And now I ride clipped in on e-bikes and flat pedals on analog bikes. Yes, it might sound a bit weird, but my logic behind it is this. On early e-bikes, the extra weight and longer chainstays made it harder to bunny hop obstacles and clear gaps. In fact, during COVID, I was so bored I made a video in my back garden where I investigated how high I could bunny hop an e-bike with clips and flats. The result was pretty conclusive. Clipless pedals boosted how high I could bunny hop a typical 22 kilo e-bike by 36%. I went from clearing 38 centimeters to 52 centimeters, and I actually matched the height I achieved on an analog bike with flat pedals. On the trail, this means I don't have to be so precise with my lines and my timing to clear tricky obstacles. I can pull for gaps that might be high risk on flat pedals in conditions that might not be perfectly predictable. The other reason I started riding clipped in on e-bikes is that I found it really helped on technical climbs. I found it much easier to hop up little ledges and steps while keeping the cranks turning and the motor spinning. I could stop at a really technical puzzle and hop the bike into a better position, get it lined up, and then get the power down. Another thing you can do on a steep e-bike climb when you're clipped in and you're forced to dab is that you can scoot up the hill. You might see this technique used by racers in the EDR power stages. Basically, you keep the motor engaged by cranking with one foot and paddling with the other. It's not pretty, but it's better than getting off and using the walk mode. Another advantage of being clipped in is that the pedals tend to be smaller than flats, which gives me more clearance when cornering or threading through ruts and rock gardens. And because my feet are mechanically connected to the pedals, they can't bounce off on rough trails. So I can use less energy keeping my feet secure and planted, and I can concentrate more on hitting the best lines and optimizing other areas of my technique, like weight distribution and braking. Basically, I don't get as fatigued, so I can channel that saved energy into other areas of my riding. If all that makes it sound like I'm favouring clipless shoes and pedals over flats, let me reassure you that I'm not. One of the biggest advantages with flat pedals and shoes is that they're cheaper than a clipless system, and they're also much less hassle. I mean, you just do up the laces and slap your foot down on the pedal. No need to faff about with setting up cleats and spring tensions. I actually love riding with both styles of shoes and pedals, and I firmly believe that every mountain biker should be confident and competent with either system. Which leads me to my final piece of advice. If you're reluctant to make the switch and learn how to use your less favoured pedal system, you're really missing out. So a great strategy is to make it your goal to take that leap next winter, for the simple reason that the weather will be rubbish, the trails will be at their worst, and it can be hard to find the motivation to ride. Making it your goal to get confident on either flat pedals or clips will not only give you a goal to aim at when rewards are hard to come by, but it means you won't feel like you're missing out on the best riding conditions as you take a step backwards in your confidence and ability. Make those off-season rides count with purposeful practice, and come spring, you'll be proficient in both pedal styles and your overall skill level will have taken a leap forward. I hope that's given you some tips and insights into two very polarising pedal systems. Now it's over to you. I'd love to know which one you prefer. Let me know in the comments below.